So traveling with kids is not about controlling the journey. It's about creating moments that stay with your family forever.
Hello, Wanderlusters. We have an episode for you. Do you hear that in the background? No, it's not that somebody's poking me. We're going to do an episode about traveling with kids. So buckle up and get your iPad ready because we have got some tips from our very own expert on travel, Nick Mornard and Associates with Dream Vacations. For not only sponsors today's episode, he's going to tell you how to travel sanely with children. This is going to be an episode you don't want to miss. And please be sure, speaking of don't want to miss, that you subscribe, share, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform so you get notified every time we drop a new episode. We have the Monday Mindset and the Wanderlust Wednesday, which is today. Happy Wednesday, Nick.
Happy Wednesday, Wheel of Winners.
Those who follow our podcast know you deliberately do not travel with children, but you obviously are interacting with hundreds of clients throughout the year who do. And so it gives a unique perspective. But what possessed you to want to have a podcast episode to talk about this today?
Well, everybody know Nick love the kids. But in all honesty, I love the kids at home for a couple of hours because they're like Uncle Nico and they're nice and stuff. But I'm so happy to be back home after that. Let's say my patience level is usually not the best with children, most children, or some children. I don't know which side I have to go to. I get calls daily about families, of course. Families travel a lot. And so I want to make sure that I don't talk only about the more adult, single or couples kind of travel, but also about family, which we did a couple of times. But here is going to be very specific about that. And the episode, actually, the traveling with kids without losing your mind. So I don't know if it's possible, but it's something. So yeah, so when I travel personally, I do love no kids. Like adult only resort. I do love like Virgin because they don't have children, or Viking because they don't have children on board. But sometimes the worst are not the children, are the young adults. I was on a cruise recently and it was like, literally I was in the middle of the ship, like midship, and then the stateroom right next to me and the other side were 8 girls. I don't believe one was above 20 years old, but they was all 18 to 20 years old, celebrating a birthday. You know, it goes in cruises. The door was all about happy birthday. I think it was 19th birthday or something. But literally, I don't think one of the girls were above 20 years old. And it was hell. Screaming. Like they cannot speak. They were yelling and they were Hispanic. So that's another level of yelling. It was literally awful. So when I say children, I may include young adult as well. Not that we were not children before, but I can tell you one thing. With my parents, if I dare to do 1% of what I see on the ship happening.
So yeah, different era.
Different era,
when you and I grew up.
But,
yeah, for sure.
But anyway, this is going to be an episode about children. So buckle up.
So here we go. Why don't we get right into it then, shall we? So let's be honest. That's what we are here on Two for the Win. We're honest, unbiased, give you both sides. Why does traveling with kids feel so overwhelming for so many families?
Because it changed the whole dynamic of the travel. That would be my answer. But more seriously, when you're traveling as a couple, it's about you, your pace, your interest, your flexibility. When you add kids, everything shifts. Now it's about energy levels, their routines, patience, and constant decision making. So what overwhelms most parents is the expectation gap. They try to travel the same way they did before without kids. And that's where frustration kicks in. So traveling with kids is not harder, it's just different. And once you accept that and adjust your expectations, everything becomes more enjoyable. Now, there are rules in that. I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to give you parenting rules, but let's move forward before I digress. But this is literally the high level when I talk to families and young families with young children. That's usually what they tell me. Nick, we used to travel to there or doing like a cruise or a resort or anything like that. We love that. Now we have our first one. And we would like to have the same kind of experience, but also something for the baby. At the end of the day, as a travel agent, you need to look for the baby or the kid, because that's what will make the travel a success. Because if a child is not happy, you will hear it and you will not be happy yourself. So that's 2 cents I have.
That is so true. And I think one of the things you touched on with that, like the pacing, right? When it's just you and somebody else, there's a certain level of pacing. And it doesn't necessarily mean fast pace or slow pace, but there's a comfort with the pacing. When you add other variables, and especially when those other variables get really noisy if they're not happy, it changes that pacing. Yeah, very true. You touched on this a little bit, but I'd like for you to go deeper. What is the biggest mindset shift that parents need to make before traveling with kids?
The biggest shift is moving from let's have a perfect trip to present trip. So things will go wrong. All right. So plans will change. Kids will get tired. They need their nap if they're young, definitely very young. Hungry, emotional at the most inconvenient times. And that's part of it. So instead of trying to control everything, focus on being present in the moments that matter. Also, success looks different for anybody. So it's not about how much you see, it's about how the experience feels for everyone. And again, if your child or your children have a great time, usually it reflects on their mood, which will reflect also on you having a better time. Mentioning also the naps earlier. So I have a bunch of clients with small children. They all tell me, do they have a place for children that they can stay, like a resort or a cruise, that they can stay for a couple of hours so we can have some time for ourselves and feel safe for the children? We can check that for you as well. Same with resort. So I think what's important as an adult is to make sure to still have some time for yourself. So yes, you go to family, you want to experience. And I get sometimes client telling me, Nissan, we don't care about the children groups and stuff because we want to experience time with our children. No problem. If you want to have children 24/7, do it. But I still think it's important for your own sanity and for your relationship that you have at least a couple of hours time, or maybe have dinner with your significant other and you can have a babysitter on site. A lot of resorts do that at a very inexpensive price. They take care of your child for a couple of hours so you can have you time with your partner. Or if you are a single parent, same. You can have time for yourself. So that's very important. When parents let go of perfection and embrace flexibility, the trips becomes lighter, more fun, and honestly more meaningful. Because what's better than anyone having a good time? Instead of saying, oh my God, our children had a blast. And you hear that a lot. Our children had the time of their life. And then what about you? Did you experience? Well, we were with the children all the time. Would it be any better to say the children had a blast? And at some point, we took a couple of hours every day with me and my husband or my wife, and we had an amazing reconnection time or whatever you want to call it. Great, that's even better. So having children on vacation doesn't mean that you cannot do anything for yourself as an adult either. That's my point.
And I think when I reflected back when my boys were younger and we had a Disney expert on, in fact, we did 2 episodes, right, with Steph and her Disney expertise. Well, I remember the first time I took both my boys to Disney. And so the hunger is a real thing. The tired, like they were walking around and at some point they're like getting cranky, staying in long lines. And I'm like, we have got to pay for the pass, the expedited pass. And then in the afternoon, even though my oldest he had outgrown needing a stroller, I still rented a stroller and pushed him around because the first time we went to a different amusement park, that was miserable. And so to your point, you got to make accommodations. But I like the idea as well, having the resort where they have the babysitter. So you get a little free time, so to speak, with the parents to do a nice dinner or something like that. That's a great tip as well.
Yeah, sure.
On that one. All right. So what are some practical ways to make traveling with kids smoother and less stressful?
Like everything, there's more than one strategy. Now, I will share a few strategies that I heard from my clients that I heard worked very well. First, slow down the itinerary. Trying to do too much is the fastest way to create stress. And it's definitely true when we have families willing to travel to a new country. So in this case, we want to go to Asia, Africa, Europe, South America. Try to avoid having a compressed day. So make sure to have more time because, again, what you just mentioned earlier, very important. You never know how the day will go, the mood will be, the tiredness, the food. So if it's like a strict schedule, like we talked about it last week with the guided tour and stuff like that, those two are really rarely with children or young children, maybe older children, because of that fact. You don't control the time. The time is there, you need to go. All right. The second point will be built around the kids' rhythm, not against it. So nap time, meal time, downtime, those matters. And you need to know based on how your child reacts with certain activities, how much time should I be scheduled in between in order to make sure that they have that time that's so needed, necessary, not only for mood, but for health and for other factors. So never lose mind of what your children need and put that in priority in order to build your itinerary around this. The third, choose the right accommodations. So space is important in the room accommodation. Convenience, like family-friendly setups makes a huge difference. I know we talk a lot about cruising here on our show because we are in Florida and of course lots of people cruises. There are so many different cruise lines. So it's very important that you understand which cruise line would fit best for the age of your children. It can be any cruise line at different point of their time, but not all of them are great for 3 years old or for 12-year-old. So very important to understand what would fit better this into your decision making for your next cruise in this case. All right. Fourth, set expectations before the trip, especially with older kids. Let them know what to expect and even involve them in planning. So I sent all the time, like, here would be the planning of the structure of the trip, differently when it's another country or an itinerary. Share that with your children if they are 15 and above, so they know what to expect. And for example, Japan, it happened recently. Someone said, okay, my son wants to really experience Disneyland in Tokyo. Okay, great. I said, show them about what's possible to do for Disney. You can have a 1-day pass or a 2-day pass. He said, well, no, 1 day is enough. Yeah, but then they cannot do the Disney Sea. I said, what is Disney at Sea? So I sent information and they looked, and guess what? They want to do the Disney at Sea, not the other one. And that just because they were not aware of that, and they have 1 day their itinerary to do something like that, and they decide to go with the sea because it's so different and it's so typical for Tokyo. And so those kind of information can change if you involve your child into those things. Now, if they are young, they are very young, I don't think you should, but it's always good that they know what to expect in advance, definitely when they are teenagers, right? And finally, always have a buffer mindset and not like that. Things take longer with kids. So accepting that upfront remove frustration. So we already mentioned that a couple of times, but very important. Have time for yourself, but always think about what your kid will need based on the experience you have having your children every day at the house. So what would trigger them positively and negatively? And make sure to have some buffer time because who knows what can happen between 2 meals.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. And I think even picking flight times, right? Sometimes I think people think they can get away with the red eye because the kid will then sleep through the flight, which usually helps because then red eye flights are a little less expensive. But if you're getting an early morning flight and you expect them to go to bed early the night before and wake up all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I would take it from somebody who lived it. That's usually not the case on that one. And the other thing, this sounds so simple, and it's a little less needed today because of just the amount of wireless charging and different charging out there, but have some portable charging packs. Yeah,
100%.
for the phone. Don't forget those because I can't tell you how many times it got low on battery out and about. And to your point about trying to foster patience, that's a way to foster patience. They can't access their phone. They're not going to be quite as patient.
True. Very true.
All right. Good practical tips. I like the 5 that you shared there. What are some of the biggest mistakes families make when traveling with kids that you hear over and over again with the hundreds of people you're working with every year?
The biggest one, and it's almost every time when I follow up, and I always follow up when people come back from their travel, the biggest one is I shouldn't have overpacked so much for my children. And it's always the case. You overpack because you think too much. And let's be honest, we live in Florida. We usually go on vacation on a cruise or in resorts close by, meaning Mexico, the DR and stuff like that. They are going to be in swim shorts all day long. They need a short and a polo at night and a pajama. Don't forget the slippers. And they will be very happy all the time. So parents want to maximize the trip. So they try to fit everything in. But kids don't experience travel the same way as we do. Remember 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago? They need space to breathe, play, and just exist. So let them and keep things very simple. I feel like I'm a child because when I travel, I take not even a check bag, but a handbag for like a week, sometimes 2 weeks. And people say, that's all you have? I'm like, that's all I need. And guess what? If I need something that I don't have, I can buy it. That's my mindset. And then I have the girlfriend with like 10 times bigger suitcase, 2 checked suitcase, 75 pair of shoes for 7 days. Oh my God. I will never get it.
Well, you got to keep the ladies happy. Yeah, they got to have the right shoes for the right outfit.
I know. Same.
Yeah.
Pajama, like swim shoe. All right, digress. Another mistake is choosing destination or experiences that are not aligned with the kid's age or energy level. And that's what I mentioned with, for example, the example of the cruise. Very important that you understand which resort, which cruise line, which destination you go, and if it fits perfectly with your child's age. Because otherwise, boring children are never good children. So very important to always choose your destination accordingly. And a big one, very big one, underestimating transitions. Like you mentioned, airports, long drives, waiting times like Disney that you mentioned. Those are the moments where stress builds and they always need to go to the bathroom in the middle of it. And it's not possible and they're not happy about it. So when family is planned for the highlight moments, but ignore the in-between moments, that's where things fall apart. So please always keep in mind those in-between moments, like I mentioned, and have a the most stress-free possible vacation with your children by always never forget those little things. Definitely when you do a build-up itinerary in another country. Because I see that so many times and I always said, I think it's a little bit too much. And then they come back, probably, let's change this. I'm like, yeah, because you have a 5 train ride and then you follow by an hour and a half in car. You sure you want to do an excursion at 5 p.m. after that?
Yeah.
Probably not the best timing.
No, so true. And I was thinking about a place like Washington, D.C., where you have all these museums, right? Again, every kid's different. So this is a generalization, but I have 2 boys. If I take them to the Natural History Museum where they see all the dinosaur bones, or I take them to the Air and Space Museum where they see the rockets and they got the different thing, that's fine. If I took them to an art gallery, or I took them to even see the Constitution, right? Because you got the long lines and then all you're doing is looking at the paper. Like when they were younger, that would have been a nightmare. I love the point about trying to match the activity. You might not be able to do, unless you set up a system like you said, like you get a babysitter or something. So then you could go see the Constitution yourself if you haven't seen it before. But most kids, especially younger kids, are probably like, whatever, and same with that. So matching the activity is very important. You're going to have to figure out different accommodations. Right?
Very true.
All right. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this one. So despite the challenges, which you've listed, let's just say a few, why is traveling with kids actually worth it?
Well, this answer is based on the feedback from a lot of families. So because these are the moments that shapes both the kids and the family, travel exposes kids to new cultures, all right, new environments and new ways of thinking. They can meet also different people. It builds adaptability, curiosity, and confidence in a way that everyday life can't, all right? But beyond that, it creates shared memories. moment you will talk about for years. Funny situation, awkward situation, unexpected experience, little wins along the way. And for the parents, it's a reminder to slow down and see the world through a different lens. It may not be perfect, but it's incredibly meaningful. So I think the good part here, it's really for the children to experience something they never did before and open their eyes to it. And you will also see what your children's interest lies a lot better. When you see that, oh my God, I never saw Spencer reacting like this by doing so, or Jonathan doing this at that moment, or Stephanie doing this. So it's a good way for you to gauge the way that your children think in environment that they're not used to be on.
Yeah, well said. And I think for myself, because when I was a kid, never traveled. In fact, I didn't even get away from Wisconsin or Chicago until I was like 17. So my family, that wasn't part of our DNA. But as I started traveling as a young adult, and obviously as I went through life, I love it. And so with my kids, travel has been a part of their life from the moment they can remember. And now I look at my oldest son, Will, who he's 20 now, but I mean, I think of all the places he's been already. He's gone to Poland. He's gone to Prague. He's gone to Vancouver. He goes to a lot of places in the US. He just came back from Ireland. Later this year, he's going to Sweden. And so he's caught the bug and he's traveling and everything, and he has his own business. And part of what he does with the income he makes from the business is he sets aside for travel. Travel is a fixed budget item because we had an episode probably a month or 2 months ago where you talked about traveling as part of your culture, as part of something like being deliberate with travel and stuff like that. So to your point about exposing them to different cultures, having them see that there's a lot out there, that whether it's outside the state or outside the country in the world to offer, and to your point about having those meaningful moments that you recollect on for sure. But it's been interesting to see how he's embraced it now as a young adult and going all over the place. And he's gone, I mean, it took me a long time to get to as many places as he's been to already in just a short period of time that he's gone. So it's very fulfilling to see it through his eyes like that.
That's a great example. It's true. Will is a well-traveled little adult for sure.
I don't know. He's all over the place. And they keep letting him back in the country. So that's good.
Those border.
All right. So a lot of great practical tips that you've shared. How would you like to summarize this episode and any last tidbits for our wanderlusters you want to share?
Well, I like to finish all the time, but what would be the best for what? And then I think that the best type of trip for families are balance of activity plus downtime, because stress reducer, it's lower expectations. Most underrated tip, plan less, enjoy more. And then the best memory creators, unplanned moments. Always good to have some time that usually the best time are the thing we didn't expect, right? So it's the same in family vacation. So traveling with kids is not about controlling the journey. It's about creating moments that stay with your family forever.
No, well said. There you go. So there you have it, Wanderlusters. Some practical tips. If you have a young family and you're trying to figure out when is the right time to do these kind of travels so that you can explore out there, but with the children, hopefully you've gleaned some nuggets from today's episode. There were quite a few. So thank you, Nick, and thank you for Nick Mornard and Associates of Dream Vacations for sponsoring today's episode. So Wanderlusters, this will wrap up this season. What a season it has been. Lots of places we've reviewed, lots of vendors we reviewed, and certainly some fantastic guests with their stories on how they made their dream vacation a reality. And we really hope that you took a lot of good things from it. So this will wrap up this season. We are going to take a little well-deserved break after 18 months straight of recording podcasts weekly. We love it. We hope you love it. And we certainly enjoy sharing it with you. Again, please be sure you subscribe, share, and follow Two for the Win so you know when the next season is about to drop. And so we'll make sure we send some announcements out on that. And we'll be welcoming you back to Wanderlust Wednesdays and talking about a lot of different new places, vendors, and guests, and maybe even a few new wrinkles. We shall see. So Take care, everyone. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for listening for Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. And we'll see you in the next season.
Thank you, everyone.